Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, this just cut me out. I don't like it. It's cutting my hair off. Okay. Well, I'm just finished taking my daughter to school. I'm about to clean up my brows, at least try to, because they're a little they're social distancing. They're enduring the struggles of the pandemic just as well as everybody else, because I can't get into a nail shop because of obvious reasons, you know, social distancing, safety protocols. They want you to sit outside, so it's your turn. Then the wait times are longer. So I had to improvise and learn how to do my own lashes. I mean, not lashes, Lord Jesus. My own eyebrows. But y'all, I'm just looking at myself on this camera. And would you look at this shit? First of all, let me tell you something. Prednisone. Thank you, but I can't see what I want to say. But like, how the hell you give me a double chin that extends from my jawline all the way over? I ain't never had that before. This some new shit here. I ain't never. I ain't never, but that's okay. But I'm gonna get into these brows really quickly. Clean up my brows, put a little lip gloss on, and just, you know, tell my story as to my sarcoidosis story, as to how it all came about for me. This actually, I mean, I was clinically diagnosed in 2017, but you know, I was having symptoms and signs way back, starting early as 5 years old. But I was never clinically diagnosed until I was 17. And the signs, the symptoms, the flares that I had previous to that weren't really giving me a cause for urgency or to be alarmed. And we just never really went further with it. What I can say is, back when it first started, I was about 5 years old. Look at my little, just like a black person. Ain't got the back or nothing or nothing. My daughter was playing with it, and it's a wrap now, because we can't even find a back to it. It is what it is. But it's my little vanity. But back as early as 2017, back in 1986, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my mother had passed away unexpectedly. I won't go into too many details, but you know, she passed away unexpectedly, and there were just a lot of changes going on with that, you know, family wise, family dynamic changes. Her disappearing obviously was the most major problem and issue that was being caused for our entire household. My father, my brothers, my mother not being there was devastating. She was very involved, she was very hands-on, she was a good mother, she was a good wife. So for her to just pass away, she was in completely good health. She was small, she was healthy. It was not something my father would have expected, my brothers, any of her family, they wouldn't have expected it. And it happened. So, you know, it's just like, she just disappeared. And I ended up in the hospital for 2 months. In the children's hospital for 2 months with kidney failure. They had no clue as to why my kidneys malfunctioned. They did not know where it was coming from. They just couldn't really tell me or really tell anybody in the family what was going on. I was 5, so it was really my father. They couldn't tell my father what was going on. No, look at her, was that her kidneys malfunctioned. And I remember, like, I got really, really swollen. Like, I was just bloated, like, from head to toe. just my eyes were almost closed. That's how full of that's how much water I was retaining. When that episode was over, throughout the years I would have other incidents, sweats, waking up and not being able to get up, like head just heavy, everything just, I'm weak, I'm extremely tired, just sleep all day when I have those instances, and then within the next 24 to 48 hours I'm fine. You know, I'm fine. And because I would be fine, you know, my grandmother wouldn't really, you know, press the issue or go hard about it or anything like that. She would just leave it alone. We went to Florida one time. Me and my grandmother took me to Miami to see my aunt. And I was out at the pool all day long. And I come in and I was fine. But this is Miami heat, Florida summers. I mean, it was in the summertime. And I came in the next day. I tried to wake up and I was just wiped out. Like I couldn't move. I was as sick as a dog. And there was no explanation for it. None. No explanation at all. And my grandmother was a little concerned. She was a little afraid. Like she was scared. Like what the hell? What's really good? What's going on? And you know, within about 48 hours I was okay. But it was a little scary. I would get usually if there was something major in my life going on that stressed me, I would end up in a flare. I would start with the cold sweats. If it's something that I'm internalizing, because I have a tendency to internalize my emotions, which is something that I learned to do when my mother passed away, given the circumstances of how I found out, or again also given the circumstances of how everything went about. Because for me, at my age, they didn't allow me to go to the funeral, so she just vanished. That's how it felt. She just disappeared. You know, I was there in the morning when the ambulance came, but after the ambulance took my mother away, I never saw her again. Never saw her another minute. And I think as a little kid, that's how I learned to cope with certain things. And I would just internalize. But when you internalize, you get anxiety. And you start to enter stress and worry. And then that starts the whole with the sweating and things of that nature. But taking it back to when my grandmother got hospitalized and got sick and passed away. And then anytime in my teenage years where I would go to the emergency room for an episode, they would always come back to me and say, do you take iron? And we're going to touch on iron later, but they were like, do you take iron? I was like, no. And they were like, well, your blood counts are off and your iron is extremely low. Okay, so then I would go tell my grandmother, hey, my iron's extremely low and I'm anemic. And I mean, she's from the old school. They don't really know a lot. She really didn't know. But she was like, oh, I'm anemic too. You know, mind you, she's sick as a dog. And she's like, oh, I'm anemic too. Okay. But I was a kid, so she's older than me. She's been there for longer. I'm gonna take her word on it. And I'm gonna just go on my business. She's still breathing. So why would I find any problem with that? You know? So fast forward, I get pregnant with my daughter. And then my breathing starts changing. And I kind of attribute it to being pregnant, maybe my allergies are heightened, maybe you know, things like that. Maybe it's my allergies. Quite a few people in my family are on pumps, asthma pumps, oxygen, you name it. Maybe it has something to do with that. But maybe this will all be over when I'm pregnant, because maybe the pregnancy is heightening it. That wasn't really the case, because it never, I'm not going to say it was bad when I was pregnant, but I noticed it was starting to change. And then after I had her, it didn't really go away. It just gradually progressed. So I went to my primary care doctor, and he put me on Symbicort and a rescue inhaler. Oh, and Qvar. So never really sent me for x-rays or CAT scans or any of that. But I figured he's a doctor. He had other means to do to test. So he should know what he's talking about, right? It gradually progressed and progressed and progressed. And this is why I say a lot of times people see me and they'll say, oh my God, like, you're on oxygen. And I'm like, yo, I've been breathing bad since 2008. The oxygen I'm actually happy to be on, because I can move around a little better. When I need to catch my breath, I can catch it. So everything from 2008 till 2017 was gradually getting worse. Keep in mind, stress is a big factor with this disease. Huge factor. Then you put in, my father got sick in 2000. My father had already been dealing with health issues, but he got really, really sick in 2015. And he had diabetes. He had diabetes, and he got sick in 2015. He got sick in 2015. You know what? Matter of fact, let me keep that back on, because that was nice. He got sick in 2015. And, I mean, really bad complications with his diabetes. We're talking amputations, infections, and I was constantly at the hospital. I was practically living there. Ultimately, my father lost his life in 2016 to diabetes complications. And I can't begin to tell you what happened in 2016. I don't know. It was like a fog. I really don't know. But I know when 2017 came in, I just didn't feel good. I already couldn't breathe. Don't think it was, the breathing was new. Like, I already couldn't breathe. So, but I was maintaining. And I was managing it, you know. Two-stepping and shit. You know, two-stepping and shit. But stairs, and even then, stairs was a challenge. Oh my God, stairs depressed me. And then I didn't have on oxygen. I wasn't clinically diagnosed. So I went to places that had little motorized carts. I was scared to use them because I was like, I look normal. So I never used them. Being stores just suffering. Anyway, I started feeling really, really sick. And it was not like normal though. It wasn't like the normal can't breathe. This was different. I tried to wing it out, thinking that you know, I went to the doctor, he gave me some prednisone, he gave me antibiotics. None of that worked. None of it. From all the grief, the stress, the depression from the passing of my father, that I was going hard because it was devastating for me. That was my only parent for the past 34 years. you know. And so now he's gone, and that man helped me with my kids. He did everything, you know. And he was gone. He was my support system, especially when it came to my kids. And he was gone, you know. And that was a huge loss for us as a unit. It was a very, very huge loss. But I got sick, got really sick behind it. And, you know, I just didn't feel good. Like, I couldn't get air in, I couldn't get air out. It was just weird. And it wasn't the normal not being able to breathe that I was used to. This was something different. Even after the antibiotics, even after steroids, inhalers, nebulizer treatments, all of that, it was not working. And I was just like, I don't know what's wrong with me. So one day I had said, you know, I'm going to take the kids to school, and then I'm going to go ahead and go to the emergency room. I could not breathe, y'all. When I tell you it took me like 15 minutes to get into the emergency room, and I parked in the handicap spot without a placard because I didn't have one then. I got one now though, but I didn't have one then. So and it took me 15 minutes to get in the door. My lips were blue and gray. I'll post pictures of it, but my lips were blue and gray. I was so out of breath I couldn't even talk. If you would have took that oxygen, and when I came in, they took my it's in my pocketbook. They took my pulse ox, which I carry around. I got one myself. And all of you, if you are on oxygen or if you have lung issues, you should have a pulse ox as well. But it's a little monitor they put on your finger to monitor the saturation of your oxygen in your blood. So you know, they did that, and they automatically rushed and put oxygen on me. My oxygen was at 69. My lips were bluish gray. I'm gonna post pictures. It was at 69. I was so swollen. Due to the fact that when your lungs mess up, it beats up your heart. And if your lungs are not pumping correctly, your heart is not going to pump correctly. And your heart sits in a sac that has fluid in it, so that it doesn't dry out. I think that's what it is. And if it can't pump it, you retain water. Everything backs up. So I was swollen. I couldn't breathe. Like, it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. So I get in there, and that starts my journey to being diagnosed. The first hospital, I wouldn't recommend a dog there. But my blessing came out of the second hospital that I got transferred to, which was not even in my state. Because my state is not equipped to handle sarcoidosis. Small things regarding it, yes, but they are not knowledgeable and resourceful when it comes to sarcoidosis. I have to go out of state to a sarcoidosis specialist. And I had to get transferred because they had me there for 9 days misdiagnosing me. That was after they misdiagnosed me the first time, sent me home, and my lungs collapsed. Then I come back, and now they're coming up with all different types of terms as to why my lungs are the way they are. Never smoked a day in my life. Never drank a day. So when I get over to the other hospital is where they went ahead and they did the biopsies on my lungs, and then they also did surgery on my lungs to take out the real disease part so that I could breathe. Then basically it's been a journey from there. And they were like, oh, you need a lung transplant. Oh, you know, we want to set you. I'm still on the lung transplant program. But when I first got diagnosed, it was so bad that my lungs were so bad that they were trying to do it immediately. But God had other plans. He had other plans. So, but the lung transplant process, I'm going to discuss that in another video. It's quite interesting. But, you know, I went through the whole process for lung transplant twice. That's how bad my lungs were. That's how bad they wanted me to. The only reason why I went through it twice was because I was chubby. I've always been chubby. It's not a big deal for me. But when you're trying to get a transplant, any surgery, your BMI has to be a 31 or less. Otherwise, it's too risky. The mortality rate from the surgery is very high if you're over a certain BMI. So they won't do it if you're over a certain BMI. My eyebrows. Oh, child. Yeah, I be trying though. Ooh, Lord, I be trying. But I'm gonna get them right. I ain't doing them yet this morning, but I'm gonna get to them. So you gotta be under 31. So now I went through and lost the weight in like a couple months, and boom, I was down to 31. So then some of my tests expired, so I had to redo all the tests. And then I was being stubborn in the beginning because I was just like, just get my mama, just get me some lungs. Because girl was bad. I was like, just get me some lungs. I just want some lungs. Y'all know I'm this sick. Just give me some lungs. You know, black people shit. Get a little ornery. You know? So, but it don't work like that. So there was protocol, process, all that stuff. You had to do pulmonary rehab, and which I wish now, which is crazy because I wish when I was on pulmonary rehab before, I was struggling. Ooh, I was in bad shape. But now I wish it were open so I can go in there, so I can get on a treadmill, work some of this off. Like, we can't even go to pulmonary rehab because of COVID. We can't. They have ellipticals, treadmills, bicycles, they got it. And nurses to oversee your vitals while you're there. So, like, I've been on oxygen since 2017. I was on 3 first. Then my lungs got worse. Went all the way up to 8, 6 and 8. And then my moving around